This is pretty much the last thing you want to see when you're trying to build a metro. They're mosaics from the Byzantine era that have been buried for more than 1,000 years. That was until they were uncovered during excavations for Greece's new driverless metro system in Thessaloniki. This is one of the oldest cities in the world, dating back to 315 BC. And that made the building of this underground railway an absolute nightmare for engineers and architects. They've been constantly derailed by hundreds of thousands of ancient discoveries just like this one all along their path. The setbacks have been so detrimental that construction work was almost abandoned partway through. This is how you build a $3 billion new metro system through the middle of one of the oldest civilizations in history. Named after Alexander the Great's sister, Thessaloniki, who legend says patrols the Aegean Sea as a mermaid, Thessaloniki is the second largest city in Greece. It's also one of the largest ports on the Aegean Sea and a major economic hub in the Balkans. While Athens, Santorini and Crete might steal the show for holidaymakers, Thessaloniki shouldn't be slept on. This cultural hotspot has emerged from centuries of history, including the Romans, Byzantines and the Ottomans. Given its rich past, it's unsurprising that millions arrive at the city's airport every year to see the sights. Which means it's all becoming pretty congested. More than 1 million people now live here, and the road network was developed well before the birth of mass transportation. The locals complain of packed buses and hassle parking.
Πάρκινγκ και δεν βρίσκεις γιατί όλοι κινούνται με τα αυτοκίνητά τους. Υπάρχουν βέβαια τα αστικά, απλά είναι γεμάτα. Όλα τα αστικά είναι γεμάτα γιατί όλος ο κόσμος παίρνει αστικό για να πάει στη δουλειά του.
This ancient city needed dragging into the 21st century, and so an underground metro was put forward. Well, re-put forward. It was actually first put forward following the Great Fire of 1917 when Thessaloniki was being rebuilt. But as you'll see, Sisyphus wasn't the only man in Greece stuck in a loop for what seemed like an eternity. It wasn't until the 1980s, more than 60 years later, when meaningful action was taken on the metro. Rather than using a tunnel boring machine like this, it was decided the cut and cover method was the answer. It's a pretty simple and cost-effective way of creating a shallow tunnel, as seen here with the construction of some of the HS2 tunnels. You dig and excavate a trench, then cover it with a strong support system to take the load of whatever's overhead. Now, initially this made a lot of sense, since the tunnel was planned to sit just 2 meters below the road surface. But this isn't just any old dig. That 2 meters of earth is in the historic city of Thessaloniki. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of concern about preserving artifacts near the top of the soil. So the plans were amended and the tunnel was moved down to at least 7 meters deep in the city centre. But that's merely the very tip of the arrow to what became the Achilles heel of Thessaloniki's new metro. But I'll get back to that shortly. Now, when you're working on any major project like this, sensitivity over confidential information is crucial. Whether it's a contract with a supplier or a private internal conversation, you need to know what you're sharing is secure. That's where today's video sponsor Proton Mail is a real lifesaver. Their world-class encryption service means you can send emails safely in the knowledge that you're protected from nasty third parties. You can use Proton Mail to customize your email workspace, safeguard valuable data, and protect your business. But their offering doesn't stop there. If you're still using the same password for various accounts or writing them down, then you really need Proton Pass. Their password manager generates, manages, and securely stores your passwords in one place. You can keep your accounts and information secure and accessible with multi-platform support as well. Your team stays connected and protected across all their devices. More than 100 million people around the world already use Proton services, and you can too. To see how you can bolster your mail and password security, head to proton.me/B1M, or for password protection, go to proton.me/pass/B1M. You can check out the links down there in the video description or as the pinned comment under this video. But that's enough about surfing online. Let's get back to surfing through the streets of Greece. Now, the perfect conditions for constructing an underground rail system include stable and consistent soil layers, limited traffic at street level, and space to work. But ask any engineer and they'll tell you it's rarely that straightforward. Cities build metros because of population increases and travel congestion. However, to build an underground line with entrances on the surface, you first have to close roads and add to the mayhem. It's kind of one step backwards in order to take a huge leap forward. For the year that followed the digging of that first hole in the 1980s, financial problems meant construction kinda dithered. The project faced a lack of support and became a symbol of political failings. That initial tunnel is known as the Hole of Kavalas and has become a running joke for those in Thessaloniki. As of 2025, it still exists, 8.5 metres wide and 8 metres high, supported by air ducts and reinforced concrete. 2 long decades then passed in which various attempts were made to fund the metro. There were threats of protest, with locals claiming that everything is done in Athens and for Athens. It wasn't until 2006 when a contract was awarded and work continued once again, this time at the western end of the new line near the main heavy railway station. By this point, a completion date of 1995 and then 2006 were both missed. A new date of 2012 was agreed, but that was set to be missed too, and delays were taking their toll.
For a decade or more, many shops and properties were hidden behind the construction area, so many people lost money, bankrupt. The customers couldn't reach their shops. And there was an open construction in the heart of the city for 18 years. So a whole generation couldn't see the city center without an open construction in it.
The plan for Line 1, also called the Base Project, was to build 13 stations with 60-metre centre island platforms. They'd then be fitted with platform edge screens and doors and linked by driverless trains running along a twin-bore route measuring 9.6 kilometres. The tunnels were created using 2 tunnel boring machines with cut and cover used for the stations and the points near the end of the line. Now, with Greece being kind of old, you never quite know what sits below the surface. It could be soil, and yet more soil. Or it could be the priceless remnants of an ancient civilization, and you can guess what they found on this project. It wasn't the soil. Over the following near 20 years, this project has been consistently delayed because of historical discoveries. So far, more than 300,000 artefacts dating back over the past 1,000 years have been uncovered at 9 of the station dig sites.
It was found public baths, jewelry, pottery, every sign of city life, houses, shops. It's a whole city under the city.
The discoveries date back to a Roman city centre and ancient road that crossed the area. Explorations were undertaken ahead of each stage of the works, but that wasn't a smooth process. Archaeologists knew that ancient history would be uncovered.
Those who decided to design the line to go through Via Egnatia, I think they ignored the archaeologists. They were not prepared for what they found. And they ran in a very important crossroad of the Cumanus Maximus and Cardo in Venizelos station. It was the heart of the city back then.
A battle ensued to protect Thessaloniki's past and build for its future. Not everyone loved the idea of moving the relics. There were archaeologists who'd helped uncover the ruins calling out their treatment. They wanted them kept in place. Some were sliced into pieces to be moved and then stitched back together, leading to questions about their authenticity. It's worth noting that some people now argue that by carrying out the work and moving these relics, more ancient history has been uncovered that would have remained lost. Regardless, this work had to progress. The answer was to merge past and present in what the government described as the biggest salvation project in Greek history. Instead of being 7 to 9 metres deep, or as initially planned just 2 metres below the surface, the tunnels were dug to a depth of at least 14 metres. In some places, they even dropped to 31 metres to avoid crashing through buried ruins. 40 years after the Hole of Kavalas was first dug, architects were sent back to the drawing board to redesign the stations. For instance, this station was moved 10 metres further east to avoid an ancient Christian cemetery and Byzantine-era wall. Major discoveries were made 6 metres below the surface at the sites for the Agia Sophia and Venizelos stations, dubbed the Byzantine Pompeii for their significance and how intact they were. These sites featured a commercial centre of the ancient city with a crossroads built by Caesar Galerius in the 4th century and reconstructed 2 centuries later. It delayed construction for years and caused bitter controversy over what should be done next. The Aegeus Sophia discoveries were taken apart and moved elsewhere. However, at Venizelos, the ruins have remained in place and now feature in an open archaeological site. By 2023, the estimated cost of the excavations had soared to nearly $140 million. The project is way over budget and massively behind schedule, but there's no denying the final product is a truly Olympian feat. While it might be many years overdue, Line 1 opened at the end of 2024.
Μιλάει από μόνο του το ίδιο το έργο, το ίδιο το μετρό, το πιο σύγχρονο της Ευρώπης, όπως αξίζει στη Θεσσαλονίκη.
Eventually, it's hoped that more than 300,000 passengers are going to use the service every day, removing some 60,000 cars from the roads. Now, granted, it feels a bit dog-ate-my-homework to blame the Romans for construction delays in the 21st century, but even Hephaestus himself would have struggled to meet those deadlines. To make matters worse, financing issues owing to Greece's financial crash in the late noughties didn't help things either. When you walk around the new metro stations today, you'll feel a real juxtaposition. You jump on rapid driverless trains and then hop off to experience displays of Thessaloniki's ancient past. It's a poignant example of what nations like Greece are up against. They're so dependent on their rich history, but also face the necessity to build for tomorrow.
It costs a lot of money to preserve those artifacts that lie beneath the earth. But it's our history. It is an obstacle, but it's up to the scientists to find innovative ways to deal with this problem.
Line 2, or the Kalamaria extension, is now under construction, adding another 5 stations onto the route. It should be finished by late 2025, adding about 5 kilometres of track heading east. By 2040, the plan is to extend east and west with 2 new metro lines covering 44 stations. Given how long Line 1 took to complete and the teething problems it's facing, locals might find themselves thinking, here we go again. But Greece is a lot stronger economically than it was 15 years ago, and lessons should have been learned from the early construction challenges along this route. We'll leave it to Apollo to predict what happens next. What we do know is that Thessaloniki is now home to one of the world's most impressive metro systems, and it's changing everyday life for its citizens. This video was sponsored by Proton Mail. You can sign up at the link below. Don't forget that we're inspiring the next generation of builders through our investment into BrickBorrow, a fantastic LEGO subscription service. You can learn more and get started today over at brickborrow.com. And as always guys, if you enjoyed this video and you want to get more from the definitive video channel for construction, make sure you're subscribed to the B1M.